Well, we've come to the Alps to drive Lexus's new LC Coupe to prove its worth as a Grand Tourer by taking one of the classic Grand Tour routes south from Munich across the bottom end of Germany, through Austria, through Switzerland and down to Milan. Along the way taking in some fairly spectacular sights, but to be honest, none quite so spectacular as this LC Coupe itself looks. This is without question one of the most gorgeous new cars of the year, and it really shows how Lexus's new design language is coming into its own and really able to create something genuinely characterful and different, utterly different from what most other car makers can offer. Now, this is a completely new departure for Lexus. It hasn't made a car in this kind of GT Porsche 911 roughly sized category since the SC430 Coupe, which was a terrible car. This is not a terrible car, and one of the highlights is this interior. Genuinely gorgeous, beautifully made, incredibly comfortable with these really cool instruments, and of course that Lexus quality which we've come to expect. You just get the sensation that this car will still be working and functioning absolutely perfectly in 10 years time. Not something you can say for absolutely all of its rivals. It's not perfect. This trackpad, and no, those fingers aren't mine, which controls the infotainment system, is a little bit fiddly to use, and the graphics on the main big screen are not exactly up to date. What is up to date is the drivetrain. This is a 3.5 litre V6 hybrid with a very clever new transmission, which we'll get into a bit more detail of in just a moment, but the headline figures are that this will do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds and yet has 145 grams per kilometre of CO2 in terms of its emissions figures. So it's incredibly cheap to tax for a car with that kind of grunt and that kind of performance. And it makes the car quite unusual, quite unique. You can buy a 477 horsepower V8 version of this car, which I have to say is spectacularly good fun and incredibly musical. This is not musical, or at least if it is, it's musical in all the wrong ways. Now, Lexus decided very early on that it didn't want to have any fake produced engine noise for the car. So when you accelerate hard and when you have the car in sport mode, a little extra flap opens up between the cabin and the engine to allow in more engine noise. Now, theoretically that should be a good idea, but unfortunately, because of the clever gearbox, it does, like most hybrids, allow the engine to drone on at high RPM. Now, it doesn't do it as much as most hybrids do. It certainly doesn't do it as much as old Lexus hybrids do, but it is still there, and it just doesn't sound very sporty. It doesn't fit in with the remit of the car. Now, perhaps that's an acceptable shortcoming given just how clever this transmission is. Lexus describes it as a multi-stage hybrid transmission, so it's not like a CVT, it's not like an automatic gearbox, it's like those two things combined. The CVT part is two electric motors which turn against each other to create resistance and therefore a gearing of sorts, and bolted to the back of that is a 4-speed transmission, which is almost a conventional automatic. 3 normal speeds which effectively multiply the speeds of the CVT, giving you, generally speaking, a 9-speed gearbox with a 10th that's overdrive. Now that's fearsomely complicated, incredibly clever, and very efficient. You really can get some decent economy out of this car. Even battling up and down the Alps and giving it some welly, we were able to get 30 odd miles to the gallon out of this car, and I dare say you'd get an awful lot better out of it if you were driving it gently. It does handle extremely well. Now, the steering is a little bit short on feel, but it's very nicely weighted, very precise. The ride's slightly too firm by normal Lexus standards, but I think it fits in with the remit of this car. It makes it feel that little bit more agile and sporty, certainly agile by the standards of a car weighing the guts of 2 tons. It isn't as good to drive as a Porsche 911, and for €110,000 perhaps you might expect it to be. But it's just that little bit different. It's a little bit more modern, it's a little bit more cutting edge. It's a hybrid, it's a Lexus. It's not the normal big sporting coupe that you might think it is, and for that, if for nothing else, we absolutely love it.